What are you doing? I'm making a pizza. I'm tossing the dough for the pizza. Is it just me? Or to make that pizza, you're using rotation? Why, yes, Bill. To make the pizza dough, I am using rotation. Thank you. Thank you for noticing. No problem. Todd, just one quick question. How does rotation even work? Well, I'm glad you asked that, Bill, because it's really simple. See, rotation works like this. Like this. Whoa. Quit messing with me, Bill. We both know that's not how rotation really works. Fine, I'll show you the real way. But my pizza's ruined. It's on the floor. Maybe someone else should show us rotation that isn't you, Bill. No, I've got it, Todd. Here, just give me a second. Allow me to transform into my ultimate form. I, Buff Boy Bill, will show you how rotation works.
Dad, if you like Squidward.
Look, I'll be honest here. I've been trying to figure out what to do for this video for ages. I don't even know how long. I can't think of anything. I'm drawing a blank. I guess that might be what happens when you do things last minute. But on another note, I just got to keep brainstorming. Just think of something. Think. Okay, I got to do something. I hit it kind of hard. It's definitely not ketchup. Get that out of here. I got to find something to wipe this up. No, I don't want to stain it. Perfect. Not only that, but it's perfectly cylindrical. You friggin' Rika! Okay, now that that's all taken care of. Fine, totally. Definitely not ketchup, but I'm okay. Either way. Supposedly, it'd be a good idea to kind of find a way to parody McCarg's video style. Oh yeah, you know what's about to go down. Now, if you thought the Units 1 and 2 videos were severely helpful in your studying for the quiz, prepare to be severely disappointed. For this Unit 4 video is going to be as basic gets. Essentially, this is going to be a short crash course on the basic concepts of Unit 4. Ready, set, go. First off, on the most basic of basic videos agenda, we've got rotational kinetic energy. Pretty similar to regular kinetic energy being 1/2 mv squared, being mass and velocity respectively, and then rotational having the m and v be replaced with inertia, capital I, and angular velocity, lowercase omega, respectively. Pretty simple, but then you add them together. That's when it starts getting interesting. Now, when you roll something like this absolutely perfect cylinder we've got here to the side, not only are you getting kinetic energy in that direction, but you're also getting rotational, as each and every point of this cylinder is moving on its own in a cycle. Then when you add those two together, you got to find the total energy, being k equals 1/2 mv squared plus 1/2 iw squared. You get the idea. Why am I wasting my time? In reality, I fooled you. It's much more simple than having to mix those two different equations together. Once you do a bunch of simplification that I really don't feel like doing right here, you get a very simple 3/4 mv squared. Makes it really easy to calculate. All right, new location just for this clip, for reasons I don't want to explain, so let's just keep going. So we found the formula for total kinetic energy of a rolling object to be 3/4 mv squared, right? So I found the mass to be 227 grams total, and then the linear velocity using the rotations per minute as well as the mass to be, let me see here, 2.5 meters per second about. So multiply the mass, 227 grams, by 2.5 meters per second, and you've got 567.5 joules for your kinetic energy there. So moving on. Now, just as basic, you've got angular velocity and linear velocity. Angular velocity is pretty dang easy. Basically, you remember we got 3 rotations per second for that perfect cylindrical object. Now, bring that up, you got 180 per minute. So to find angular velocity, you've got 2 pi times your period of time, that being 1 revolution. So for a minute, all you'd have to do is put 180 times 2 pi, which I didn't do for some reason for this. But once you divide that by 60 to get per second, then you've got, for this, 18.85 radians per second. Now, linear velocity is just as basic, if not more. For linear velocity, all you take is the angular velocity times the length of the radius, which I, for calculation reasons, found to be 0.13335 meters. Yeah, very inconvenient number, but it works. Anywho, once you multiply those two together, you get 9.05 kilometers per hour for your linear velocity of this beautiful, beautiful cylindrical object that saved my life. And probably won't save yours, because this is a waste of time video that ain't worth watching. Finish off this completely unhelpful video that will not help you in any way to pass this next upcoming quiz, we've got angular momentum. So, simple formula, L equals I times omega. That's angular momentum is equal to moment of inertia times angular velocity. We've already got both of those points, but just to be succinct, sorry for not being that in depth with the moment of inertia. I kind of quickly calculated that, but I fixed it up into metric as things should be in physics, and I got kilograms times meters squared, 9.29. And then from the previous problem, we've got 18.85 for the angular velocity. Multiply those two together, and you've got 175.12 joules per second for the angular momentum. Whew! Finished. Now you don't have to sit through any of my bull. Go on your grand old way. Have a nice day. I don't know how to finish this off, so get out of my house.
You have some pretty basic concepts in rotation. You have V equals RW. D equals R theta, and A equals, where's my pen, equals R alpha. These are the base principles. This is rotational acceleration, this is rotational distance, and this is rotational velocity, and these are how they convert. When you're talking about forces and energy, you have 1/2 mv squared. When you're talking about rotation, you have 1/2 I squared, where this I equals mr squared. And this is kind of your mass equation in terms of rotation. Hey. Oh no! Hey. By the way, what is this I called? That is the moment of inertia. It works. Oops. That's right, it is the moment of inertia. And it works kind of like mass in the equations that you use, as shown here, with I woo squared. So that's kind of the base of rotation, right there. The more you know, the more that you know. Do, 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 do. Yeah. Sadly, he shared too much information too quickly, and he flew into the sun and died. Oh no! Goodbye.
Rotation.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to be working free response problem for Unit 4, rotational unit. So this is the free response I'm going to be working. A cloth tape is wound around the outside of a uniform solid cylinder, mass m, radius r, and fastened to the ceiling as shown in the diagram above. The cylinder is held with tape vertical and then released from rest. As the cylinder descends, it unwinds from the tape without slipping. The moment of inertia of a uniform solid cylinder about its center is 1/2 mr squared. Okay. First one, it just gives us a circle, and it wants us to draw the vector showing all the forces acting on the cylinder after it's released. Okay, so for this one, if I can figure out how to draw in paint, there's only going to be two forces. There's going to be, hold on, it's going to be the force of tension from the tape attached to the cylinder, and then from the center downwards, there's going to be the force of gravity. And always, let's just keep in mind, as a rule of thumb, that the sum of all forces is equal to mass times acceleration. Okay. Force of tension, force of gravity, nothing else is acting on our object right now. Then, it says if the cylinder has a constant acceleration downwards of 5 meters per second squared, what is the tension in the rope if the mass of the cylinder is 5 kilograms? Okay. So the sum of all forces is equal to mass times acceleration. This is where this comes in handy. So F of G, and it's opposed from F of T, so minus F of T should equal mass times acceleration, because these are opposing forces. And we know that F of G is equal to mg, or mass times gravity. So we know that it weighs 5 kilograms, so 5 times 10 for gravity minus F of t is equal to 5 times 5. So we know that 50 minus F of t is equal to 25. Therefore, F of t is equal to 25 newtons. Bam. A and B done. Okay, now we move on to C. If the radius is 0.5 meters, what is the net torque on the cylinder? Okay. Well, for this one, net torque, so torque is equal to moment of inertia times alpha, or torque is equal to force times radius. And this one is the one we're going to be using because it gives us the radius, but we need to keep this one in mind for later. So we know that the sum of all forces is equal to 25. So T is equal to 25 times 0.5 And if not, I'm not mistaken, this is equal to 12.5. So we know that the torque is equal to 12.5. 12.5 Nm. Okay, so this is the hard one. When it has fallen 2 meters, what will its angular speed be, and how long will it take it to get that far? So this is the one that involves rotational kinematics. So we have, and this is the one where we're going to be using this formula. So we are looking for angular speed. So we're looking for not alpha. We're looking for WF, or what would be V2. We're looking for W final, and we're looking for time, because how long did it take to get that far, right? So, what else do we have, right? So we know it's fallen 2 meters, but we're not using distance for this. We're using theta instead of distance for our rotational kinematic. So to get that from 2 meters, well, if you remember, d is equal to r theta, and we know r to be 0.5, so 2 is equal to 0.5 theta, and therefore theta is equal to 4 radians. Okay, so you know that theta is equal to 4. We also know that it's that w initial, its initial angular velocity, is equal to 0 because it's starting at rest and it's being released. So we know that's 0. We're trying to find its velocity that it's reaching, and we know that theta is 4 radians. And finally, we need alpha. We need its angular acceleration, and we're going to use this equation for it, because we know that I is equal to 1/2 m r squared, because in the beginning of the problem it told us that this is the moment of inertia for a cylinder. Okay, so we're trying to find I so that we can plug it in to t equals IA to find what A is, because we know what t is. We just need to figure out what I is to figure out what A is. So I is equal to 0.5 times 5 times 0.5 squared. So in the end, I is equal to, I believe, okay, so I is equal to 0.625. And we know that t is 12.5, so 12.5 is equal to 0.625 times alpha. From there, we can find that alpha is equal to 20 radians per second squared. And from there, we have all the information we need to use our rotational kinematics to find WF and T. So we're going to be using two different formulas for this one. So we need one that has T but not this one. So probably theta is equal to WI WIT plus 1/2 alpha t squared. For this one, we know that theta is 4, so 4 is equal to, and we know that Wi is 0, so this just cancels out, boom boom, 0 plus 0.5 times 20 times t squared. So now we know that 4 is equal to 10 times t squared. Okay? And from there, we can determine that t is equal to 0.635. Boom. That's 1. We have 1 right here. Right? Now finally, we need to solve for WF. And we have WT, so we can use that in our equation, but I don't think we need to. I think we can just use WF squared is equal to WI squared plus 2AD. That should work. So we know that WF squared is equal to 0 plus 4 times 20 times, or sorry, 2 times 20 times 4. So that would be WF squared is equal to 160. And I believe that would make WF equal to 12.65 radians per second. There we go. And now finally we have E. While descending, does the center of the cylinder move toward the left, toward the right, or straight down? Explain. Now, even though the cylinder is rotating, it's actually moving straight down. You may be asking yourself, how can it be moving straight down? Because we have tension on one side and gravity on the other, and it's rotating. But if you remember back to our free body diagram with force and tension, force and gravity, even though they're offset, the rotation is caused by them being offset. But they're both going straight up or straight down. There's no force acting left or right on our cylinder. Therefore, it moves straight down. No forces left or right. There we go.
Alright, on the diagram below, draw and label the forces, not components, that act on the wheel as it rolls down the ramp, which is indicated by the dashed line. To clearly indicate at which point on the wheel each force is exerted, draw each force as a distinct arrow starting on and pointing away from the point at which the force is exerted. The links of the arrows need not indicate the relative magnitude of the forces. So, this is the simple ramp problem as seen here. So this is rotational, but we can use the same forces that we've used for the units of forces. So what forces are there? There's obviously the force of gravity that comes from the center mass and goes straight down. There's the force of friction, which is exerted on the single contact point. And then there's the normal force, which goes parallel. Let's see, gonna run it a little bit which goes parallel to well, perpendicular, not parallel, to the ramp surface that it goes on. And here's a slightly cleaner diagram. So part 2 says, as the wheel rolls down the ramp, which force causes a change in the angular velocity of the wheel with respect to its center of mass? So the answer here is the force of friction. And this is because you need a torque to change the angular velocity. And torque equals force times distance perpendicular. And so the force of friction is the only force that is perpendicular to the center of mass of the wheel, because the normal force, as you can see here, is pointed straight at the center of mass, and the force of gravity is coming straight away from the center of mass. So the force of friction here is the only one that's perpendicular to the center of mass. And here's part 2, again, cleaned up a little bit so it's easier to read. Part B says, for the ramp angle, the force of friction exerted on the wheel is less than the maximum possible static friction force. Instead, The magnitude of the force of static friction exerted on the wheel is 40% of the magnitude of the force or force component directed opposite to the force of friction. Derive an expression for the linear acceleration of the wheel's center of mass in terms of m, theta, and physical constants as appropriate. So we have the force of friction is equal to 0.4 times mass times gravity sine theta. So then we take that and we say the sum of the forces equals mass gravity sine theta. Sum of forces equals mass gravity sine theta minus 0.4 mass gravity sine theta. That gives us a sum of forces of 0.6 mass gravity sine theta. And you know what else is the net forces of the sum of the forces? Force equals mass times acceleration. So we say mass acceleration equals 0.6 mass gravity sine theta. We divide both sides by m. We divide both sides by m. And we get acceleration equals 0.6 g sine theta. Alright, so that gave us the answer to part B, but some people might be confused about how we got things like the sine theta in the first place. So I'm going to explain that really quickly just so you have a better understanding of the concepts themselves. So on our wheel, use this. On our wheel, just one thing. On our wheel, we have a few forces. We have the force of gravity, going straight down, the force of friction, and the normal force. So the force of gravity is comprised of two parts. The normal force part that cancels out with the other part, and this other part, which ends up being our acceleration. And so the way we solve for this acceleration is it's going to be mass gravity, which is this, times sine of theta, where this is theta. And that gives us this arm. And so this arm represents our acceleration, because we split mass gravity into two parts to cancel out the normal force. So this is our acceleration. So this is mg sine theta. So this represents our forward momentum, or forward acceleration. And we subtract that, the friction, which is 40% of the force directed in the opposite direction. So mg sine theta minus 0.4 mg sine theta gives us the force that's directed downwards, which will be our accelerant. And then we solve for the other steps where we set this equal to ma, we divide everything by m, and we get our proper formula. Okay, it looks like the last part got a little bit cut off over here, so I rewrote the final answer and the step before the final answer, and here's the step before that final answer, which was explained previously, just to help you make sure that you know how to do part B. Okay, so for part C, the same wheel was placed on its side and was given a speed of 1 radian per second, while its moment of inertia is 10 kilometers times meters squared. If the speed is changed to 5 radians per second by changing the I, what is the new I? And there's no outside torque. So this means that angular momentum, AM or angular momentum, is conserved. So it's going to stay the same. So L equals L. So IW is going to equal IW. So 10 times 1 equals I times 5. So the new I is going to equal 2. Now, when it says radians per second, that means I, because velocity is meters per second. It's an S second. And rotational velocity is radians per second because it's theta over S. So just remember that. Momentum's the angular momentum is conserved, so IW equals IW. So I equals 2.